Welcome back to Balderdash Academy. Our points are: in last place is myself with 25 points. Next, we have Molly with 200. We have Marie with 275. We have Nate with 375. And Randy with 400. So,
who knew?
Who knew? We are here today with Visiting Professor John McCarthy. John's a 25-year publishing veteran who last served as the senior managing editor and spirits and cocktail pundit at Men's Health magazine. Since leaving the magazine, John has traveled the world in search of intelligence about fine wine and spirits, amazing adventures, and incredible stories for publications like Roads and Kingdoms, Forbes, Men's Health, Maxim, J.W. Marriott Magazine, Bourbon Plus, and Gear Patrol. John is also the director of judging for the Barleycorn Awards, an international spirit competition. The link to the society is in the description. He also is currently shamelessly, and we appreciate that he's doing it shamelessly, plugging his first book, The Modern Gentleman, The Guide to the Best Food, Drinks, and Accessories. Again, the link to the book is in the description. So when at home, he resides in Queens, and before COVID blew the world up, or just blew the world if that's what you're into, John was the whiskey director and bartender at the Rose Room at the Garden City Hotel. John, welcome to Balderdash Academy.
Yay.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. But before we started, we were talking about the Barleycorn Awards, and in particular, could you tell us a little bit about the Barleycorn Awards and the Barleycorn Society?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Barleycorn Society is a compilation of spirits journalists like myself. And when we formed Barleycorn, which is a spirits competition, spirits taste competition primarily, we also do marketing. But we wanted to create a competition that kind of ran through the lens of people who talk about these spirits and who have influence over these spirits all the time. So that's really where we got started with it. We've been at it. We're in our second year now, but we've been working on it for about 4 years or so, and it's doing really well. We just released our medalists last week for the spring competition. We do this twice a year. And I am actually drinking the winner right here, which is a Four Roses single barrel from Kentucky. Beautiful bourbon.
Cool.
So, right on to Four Roses. They did an excellent job. And there you go, Barleycorn.
Were you part of the inception of the whole thing? Did you help create it?
I was, yeah. I helped create it through a guy who does award shows for a living. He does like marketing awards. He does the Marcom Awards. He does the Hermes Awards. He does these all these like kind of like third-party award programs that you may or may not have heard of, but do extremely well. And he's also a whiskey geek, and he wanted to get involved in booze. So through a mutual friend, he was introduced to me, and this is what we built together.
So basically, you knew a guy.
That's right. I knew a guy who knew. That's how it all happens.
I got a rookie question. How did you come up with the name?
With the name Barleycorn?
Yeah.
Okay, so to tell you the truth, the name Barleycorn came from my partner. His name's Ed Dalheim, and he felt very strongly about this name. Barleycorn, there's a lot of different connotation to it. It goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And if you think about barley and corn being obviously ingredients in whiskey, ingredients in spirits and stuff like that, there's the symbolism. And in order for that spirit to become a spirit, it needs to go through a cycle of life. So it needs to grow, it needs to die, and then we distill it and resurrect it again. So there you have it.
So it's like an exorcism.
Like ghosts.
It is a little religious, a little spiritual.
Thank the Lord.
That's right.
Well, I mean, that does make sense too. So, I mean, prior to the 15th century, the word corn referred to any grain, not what we think of.
That's right.
So,
exactly right.
Yeah. Now, we're living in an age of
A lot of drinking.
a lot of drinking, but in appreciation of spirits in general, and that I think probably started with the craft beer movement. We're seeing a lot more craft distilleries. We're seeing a lot more appreciation for whiskeys and for liquor in general. We're even seeing, if you move on to like the YouTube side, I mentioned Whiskey Tribe earlier. They're a group trying to make whiskey a little more accessible. You have Greg from How to Drink, who's experimenting with old recipes, with newer spirits, trying to elevate them or just experiment or remove the mystery around them. Now, what do you think's driving that change from liquor as booze to liquor as something a little bit more fine and a little bit more refined?
Interesting. I thought you were going to ask me what the hell I'm doing to move the ball forward after.
Oh God, no.
Well, yeah. What are you doing?
What the hell are you doing? Well, these guys are doing this. That's what I thought you were gonna. That's what I thought you would say. All right. So you touched on a couple of different things, and there are a lot of different answers to this. But I think that we can all agree that Scotch whiskey really started taking off and being interesting to people in the 90s in the event of single malt Scotch as opposed to blends. Okay, and there was a lot of marketing behind bringing single malt to the United States or whatever, but we embraced that, and we've had single malt with us now for 30 years, let's say, or close to it.
Yeah.
Now, a decade later, in the early 2000s, a couple of things really started to happen. First of all, the trend started to shift toward people really enjoying whiskey more and becoming more involved in that. A lot of it, to your point, comes out of the idea of craft beer, comes out of the food movement and the foodie movement of the early 2000s. All of that kind of stuff plays in. Fine wine obviously has a lot to do with it. But once that stuff started to trend, a couple of different things happened. Everybody started buying everything, especially in the United States, in terms of bourbon that anybody in Kentucky makes because it got hot. And it also sparked a craft distilling movement in this country, which really just kind of got started around 2004 and is still in some form of infancy to this day. And a lot of that came from the food culture, the idea that local sustainable will make better, the beer culture, beer, 95% of beer back in the day was owned by 5 companies, and it wasn't very good, and they couldn't do it well. So with craft beer, it did, we had that whole revolution and everything else, and people felt like distillation was the next shoe to drop. And in 2004, there were 60 distillers outside of like the big guys, the 7 big guys in Kentucky and all that. And today there's like 1,500 different distilleries in this country. So it's really grown quite a bit. And the booze that they make has gotten a lot better too. So the whiskey scene that we grew up with coming into the space as we were coming of age will look a lot different than an 11-year-old right now who'll be coming into the space in 10 years based on what a lot of these craft guys are doing. Bringing forward new categories like American single malt, making rye whiskey, which nobody was drinking 10 years ago. Now rye whiskey is a huge category that's growing every year. So, what starts from a trend, there are so many different angles to look at why whiskey got hot. But once it did, people really got enchanted with it.
I've been drinking for approximately 12 years now, and I was very fortunate.
Legally for 10.
My dad.
I started drinking.
Well, when I legally came of age, my dad was like, "It's very important that you know how to drink good. You need to drink well." And so he taught, I started drinking whiskey with my dad, right when I turned 21. And I find that a lot of my girlfriends are kind of afraid of whiskey. And I'm like, it's wonderful. However, as somebody who knows a lot of whiskey, and over the past few years, it's even blown up even further. What would be a good whiskey to start somebody off with? If they've never really had a taste for whiskey before, but kind of want to get into it, and something easier to drink that, what would you suggest to get somebody to like whiskey?
Something really, well, it takes a little while. Like to me, it's like you have to break through a
Yeah.
barrier to start to kind of get it. You know what I mean? And to
Yeah.
do that, you want to go in through familiar territory. Okay, so you want something, maybe you want something that's light. Maybe you want something, that's approachable, that will have some undertones to it, that will be something that you're used to drinking. And I'm going to give you I'm going to give it two answers. They both might be surprising.
Great.
The first one, the first one would be a Canadian whiskey, and I would say like a Crown Royal or something like that is an excellent beginner whiskey. And the reason for that is the way they make that whiskey is basically they start with almost a vodka. So they make basically a vodka, or very, very close to a vodka. So it has that real neutral grain kind of light backbone to it, as opposed to like a much heavier bourbon or something like that. And then they'll age that very highly proof spirit that's close to a bourbon in a barrel, and then kind of spike it up with like rye flavor and wheat flavor and stuff like that to get it to their flavor profile. But the backbone of it is very light, so it's an approachable whiskey. Crown Royal would be my first.
Wow.
See, I wouldn't have even thought of that. That's awesome.
Plus, you get the little purple bag.
It is really cute. I just keep changing it.
Yeah, I'm a gamer. I still have 3 bags of that filled with dice. So earlier, you joked about. So what did you do to advance that? And it's a good question. Tell us about your book.
Yeah.
And other segues.
Which one I wrote, or the one I'm writing now? This one.
Both.
Yeah, The Modern Gentleman. Tell us about it.
Yeah, no problem, man. The Modern Gentleman is not just a booze book. The Modern Gentleman it's really written for anybody who's interested in knowing a little bit more about the stuff that we eat and we drink and we consume and we enjoy every day. And I am of the mind that if you know more about the stuff that you're enjoying, more about the stuff that you're eating and drinking, you're going to enjoy it more.
Totally.
Okay, so when I was, I joke in the book that when I was 32, I was still drinking wine out of a box, and that's true. I didn't know the difference between a Merlot and a Cabernet and a this and a that, and I didn't care. But now that I do know, I wish I did know then, and I wish I did care. So that's what this book is. So I take about 15 different topics, from cigars to hot sauce to cheese to rum, cocktails, whiskey, wine, beer, all that type of stuff. And I just try to give you an entry point into those categories and help you understand them a little better, and give you a place where you can jump off and go further into it if you want to. So it's really written for younger people, but it's good for anybody.
If I don't want to be a gentleman, could I just be a modern lady but know all that stuff too?
Yeah, you can. I hate that the name of the book is so uninviting to so many people, because really
I love it.
It's for everybody. It's written for everybody. It's supposed to be really fun. I hope it's not like an encyclopedia. It's just like, hey, you need to pick up cigars. Here's how to, and you don't know anything about them. Neither did I. So
That's super useful.
here's how to find one.
Absolutely.
Looking like an idiot.
It's about making it accessible. And there's so little out there right now. I mean, you could go to Reddit and then you drown in Reddit boards. Everybody has their own opinion. It's difficult to find a resource that allows you the information to build your own opinion about what you need to do to develop your own palates.
So, John, what's your new book about?
My new book is going to be, the working title is Whiskey Rebels, and it's funny because it's very similar to what I was just talking about earlier. It's literally, and this is why I know so much about this stuff, but it's literally a recent history of American craft whiskey, and I mean really recent history. In 2000, like I was saying before, in 2004 or so, these guys, there were maybe 60 distilleries in the United States or something like that. And all these guys came in and just started asking questions and bucking trends and saying, well, why can't we make bourbon in New York, for example? Why can't we make rye in Maryland, where rye is actually from?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that? And the reasons were never good ones. They were just never fixed from prohibition, And it really took a while before people could get into the idea of doing it, and then they had to compete with these big companies, which everybody was really intimidated to do. So it took a long time to get it going. But the guys who did are the guys that I'm talking about. These are my whiskey rebels, as I call them. And these are the guys who started distilleries, who have really made a difference coming out of this craft revolution, as I'll call it, over the last 15 years. Westward Whiskey would be one of them. Definitely Tuttletown here in New York would be one of them. Stranahan's in Colorado, Balcones in Texas, Corsair in Nashville, Sagamore in Maryland. I mean, they're all over the country, and they're amazing entrepreneurs who have really broken down every convention and have faced a massive corporate beast to get a seat at the table for whiskey, and they actually made it happen. And then all of a sudden started getting purchased by these huge companies and becoming millionaires and stuff like that. Right. It all happened. So that's what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah, must read for anyone who likes whiskey.
Talk about a risk, though. I mean, you're talking about an industry where, your product, you're looking at 12 to 18 years before you have a usable product in the whiskey world, which means you basically need to find your way making a profit on blends, right? Prior to having your own product line. I mean, unless environmental factors are in play and you're in a hotter state like Texas or
sure. Well, in America, you're not typically going to go that long, and the crafts don't go that long. You know what I mean? They do everything that they can do. They try to age whiskey in smaller barrels to various degrees of success. But to your point, it takes years to get it going. And you need a lot of money. So what do you do? You make whiskey and you put it in a rick house, you put it in a warehouse, and you wait for years before you can sell it. So people do other things. They either sell it as White Dog or moonshine. Like, that's a very common thing. Yep. They'll make vodka, and they'll make a white neutral spirit that they can get on the store shelf right away while that whiskey ages. Another thing that producers will do is source whiskey while they're building a distillery, getting their juice laid down in barrels and aged. So they'll purchase whiskey, get it into their flavor profile. That's somewhat frowned upon in the industry, but it happens, and it's not that frowned upon. Because, again, who has pockets deep enough to wait all those years to make a penny back on your whiskey? And what if you age it out and it never turns? It isn't that good. You're in a little bit of trouble. So unless there's really deep pockets, nobody's able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Now,
well, I think this would make a really good Christmas present to 3 different people in my family. So you just let me know when this book is ready to buy, because I'm on it.
Just buy them for me, and I'll sign them for you.
All right, perfect. Done.
Make great gift.
All right, Nate, what were you going to say?
Now you've written for many different magazines over the years. So this is a 2-parter question. Do you feel like that brought you to these 2 books, that one that you have written, one that you are writing, and how has your style of writing for magazines kind of influenced these books? And my second question is, have you ever thought about writing for Highlights or Ranger Rick?
So is
Highlights make it more interesting?
Spill around. Ranger Rick I can't speak to. Highlights is I'm aware of that publication. I know them very well, but I don't know them very well. But I did apply for Highlights once.
Did you?
That's awesome!
At one point in my career when I was out of work, but it was one of those I don't know. I was like, I play guitar and I drink whiskey, and it was one of those kind of applications.
I mean, you could do a pre-wine, this is a really good grape juice type of thing.
Take me for what I am, or we're not going to get along over here in Highlight.
Right.
Available, but this is what you're going to get.
Oh my God, that's great.
As an illustrator, my dream was Hidden Pictures.
It's a really well put together magazine, and that's funny. One of the things that drew me to it is, in most of my career, to answer your question, I was actually more in magazine management, production, design, stuff like that. But it ended up management toward the end of my career. So I was doing a lot of graphic design, I was the production director of several magazines throughout New York City, all through the 90s and 2000s. When I ended up at Men's Health magazine, that was 2006. That is really when I started writing a little bit. And when I was writing for that magazine, it was great for me because I was the managing editor of the magazine. So I was also able to tell everybody what to do. So I had an amazing group of talented people around me, editors and copy editors and a fact-checking department. I mean, ridiculous, for anybody to start, just to kind of start getting into it. And I had, real food journalists around me and stuff like that. And so I started writing at Men's Health. I started writing food, and I am not a vegetarian, but I'm like a pescatarian. And I realized very soon into writing about food, that I was going to hit a ceiling real quick. First of all, it was a saturated market. Second of all, I didn't eat so many things that I couldn't really do it. But then I realized that, I drink everything. And this was like 2010 or so, and the whole cocktail scene was starting to happen, and I was very aware of it.
Yeah.
And then the booze scene was starting to kick up, and I was becoming very aware of that too. So that's when I started switching from food to booze, and it all started with a little tequila article that I wrote. And the next thing you know, I got invited to Mexico, and I'm like, oh shit, I think I'm onto something here.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
It always starts with a little tequila.
It does. George Clooney invited you, didn't he?
Yeah. So just the last part of your question, I'm sorry to keep going, but Men's Health had a book division as well. And one of the book editors there was a very dear friend of mine. So after I left Men's Health, he went on to work. He was laid off as well. We all were. So he was laid off as well and went on to work for another publisher called Duo Press. And Duo Press was a children's book publisher who was trying to build a young adult and an adult category. So they had a bunch of ideas and a bunch of books that they wanted written. And he turned to me, and that's where we hatched The Modern Gentleman. And that's how I came to writing that book. And after that experience, the publisher and I just decided to keep working together. And that's where he greenlit to publish Whiskey Rebels for me, which I'm working on now. So.
That's awesome. So you had a failed career as a salad reviewer, and that's okay. We all have ups and downs. But as the whiskey sommelier at the Rose Room, and you obviously know your way around a cocktail. What's your favorite?
Ooh,
Let's close this out. Let's close this out with a John McCarthy recipe.
I bet it's an Ep14.
If you read my book, I'll talk about how much I hate talking about my favorite anything because it's like having a favorite song. At one point, if you're in a certain mood, you want to hear a certain song, and in that moment, that's your favorite, right? And if you're
let me rephrase.
No, all right, go ahead.
What's a cocktail you would make for guests coming over? What's your go-to?
Let's see. What time of year is it? No. No, that's true. All that stuff.
No, absolutely.
If you were coming over for
December when this comes out.
Yeah, if you were coming in the summertime, I would do something like a watermelon aid with a little bit of vodka topped with bubbles or something like that, or really like that. But in the wintertime or whatever, and friends are coming over, and we're like, I like whiskey, so I would probably just do an old fashioned. I love classic drinks. I love Manhattans. I think they're delicious cocktails. It's all about the ingredients and the right ingredients, but they're very simple to make. So that's what I really focus on, but I can make anything.
Nice.
I'm coming over soon.
So take some time, muddle your cherries for your drink, enjoy, and have a sip for us. When we come back, we're going to have our Steam Pop quiz and Lie Again, only on Balderdash Academy. Go Dashers! For complete episodes and more, visit us at balderdashacademy.com.
Time to see how a highball can lead to a high block. I promise I'm telling the truth when I say that you won't want to miss the next part of Balderdash Academy. Join us for a nostalgic walk down memory lane as we recount the bubonic plague in Italy and their affinity for flask-laden carrier pigeons and medieval t-shirt cannons full of booze on the next part of episode 14 with John McCarthy, only on Balderdash Academy.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. You can find us on your favorite podcast service as Balderdash Academy. Go Dashers!